I've lived long enough to tell you something most people don't want to hear. Most people don't waste their lives on purpose. They just keep postponing. Postponing conversations, postponing presence, postponing the things that actually matter. Until one day, they realize that years have passed and they've only been existing. I'm 78 years old. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm an American, and I'm a veteran. And I learned this truth early in my life, but I understood it far too late. So before you close this video, before you go back to scrolling, before you tell yourself you'll think about this later, I need you to listen, because later might never come. And I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. I don't want you to spend decades of your life asleep, only to wake up when most of it is already gone. So sit with me for a few minutes. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me when I was younger. When I was young, I believed that living meant enduring, that fulfilling your duties, working hard, and staying silent through pain was what made you a man. I thought rest was weakness, that pausing meant giving up, that talking about what you felt inside was a waste of time better spent doing something productive. The war reinforced all of that. Over there, you learn to keep moving forward no matter what. You learn to bury things deep and lock them away. You learn that survival is the only goal that matters, but nobody teaches you what to do after. Nobody tells you that the same skills that keep you alive in war can slowly kill you in peace. Nobody warns you that you can come home and still be lost. I came back to this country with my body intact and my mind somewhere else entirely, and for decades I lived that way, present but absent, breathing but not alive. I moved through my days like a man underwater. Everything muffled, everything distant, everything just out of reach. I want to tell you about the men I served with. Good men. Ordinary men with small, honest dreams. Some of them wanted to open a garage back home. Some wanted to marry their sweethearts and raise kids who'd never have to see what we saw. Some just wanted to fish on Sunday mornings and drink beer with their fathers and grow old quietly. They were funny, scared, brave, and human. Some of them didn't come home. Others came back, but they never really returned to life. I carried their names with me like a weight I wasn't allowed to put down. For years, I told myself I didn't have the right to rest while they couldn't continue. While they stayed forever young in my memory, I felt like I owed it to them to keep pushing, keep working, keep existing without complaint. I thought that's what honor meant, that if I stopped, if I slowed down, if I let myself feel anything, I'd be disrespecting their sacrifice, so I didn't stop. And in refusing to stop, I fell asleep to my own life. Sleeping on life doesn't mean being tired. It means being absent. It means going through the motions without ever really being there. It's waking up, going to work, coming home, eating dinner, watching television, going to bed, and doing it all again the next day without ever once stopping to ask yourself if you're actually living or just filling time until you die. It's sitting at the table with people you love and thinking about something else. It's hearing someone speak to you and realizing you haven't listened to a single word. It's standing in a room full of people and feeling like you're watching your own life happen from somewhere far away. That's what I did for years, decades if I'm being honest. I told myself I was fine. I told everyone I was fine. And I believed it, because I didn't know what else to believe. I thought that being physically present was enough. I thought that showing up, putting food on the table, fixing things when they broke, and keeping the house running was the same as being alive. It wasn't. My wife's name was Eleanor. We shared a house for 43 years. We raised a daughter together. We sat across from each other at breakfast every morning, and she'd ask me how I slept, and I'd say fine, and she'd nod and pour the coffee, and we'd go on with the day. But the truth is, I wasn't really there. I was in that chair, but my thoughts were somewhere else, with the men who didn't come home, with decisions I made that I couldn't undo, with a version of myself I'd left behind and never fully returned from. Eleanor knew. She must have known. She never pushed, never demanded, never made me feel guilty for the distance between us. She just stayed. And I loved her for that, but I also took it for granted. I remember one night, maybe 10 years into our marriage, she asked me a simple question. We were sitting on the couch after dinner, and she turned to me and said, "Are you happy, Robert?" I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her yes, but the word caught in my throat, because the truth was, I hadn't thought about happiness in years. I didn't think I was entitled to it, so I just said, "I'm here, aren't I?" And she smiled, one of those small, sad smiles that stays with you forever. And she nodded and turned back to the television. We never talked about it again, but I think about that moment all the time now, because she wasn't asking if I was physically present. She was asking if I was alive. My daughter grew up watching a father who was reliable but distant. I showed up to her school events. I taught her how to ride a bike. I walked her down the aisle on her wedding day, but I was never fully there. I was there in body, doing the things a father is supposed to do, but somewhere inside I was still carrying the weight of men who never got to be fathers, men who never got to see their children grow. And I thought that carrying that weight was a way of honoring them. I thought that if I allowed myself to be fully present, fully joyful, fully alive, I'd somehow be betraying their memory. So I stayed half present, half alive. And my daughter learned that love could look like duty, that a father could care without ever really connecting. She deserved better than that. Eleanor deserved better than that. But I didn't know how to give it to them, because I didn't know how to give it to myself. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from living this way. It's not the tiredness you feel after a long day of work. It's deeper than that. It's the exhaustion of pretending you're fine when you're not, of smiling when you feel nothing, of going through the motions year after year without ever stopping to ask yourself why. So let me ask you something right now, and I want you to be honest with yourself, even if you don't say it out loud. Are you really living your life? Or are you just going through the motions? Are you present with the people around you, or are you somewhere else in your head? Do the people you love know they're loved? Or do they just assume it because you haven't left yet? These aren't easy questions. I know that. But they're the questions that matter. Because the life you're living right now, this ordinary, unremarkable, sometimes frustrating life, is the only one you get. You don't get a second chance. You don't get to go back and do it over with the wisdom you'll have later. This is it. And the tragedy isn't that life is short. The tragedy is that most of us sleepwalk through it. We tell ourselves we'll be present later. We'll have that conversation later. We'll take that trip later. We'll tell the people we love how much they mean to us later. But later is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of being fully alive right now. I didn't wake up all at once. It happened slowly, over years, in small moments that didn't seem significant at the time, but added up to something I couldn't ignore. I remember the first time I really saw Eleanor, not just looked at her, but saw her. After decades of marriage, we were sitting in the kitchen on a Sunday morning. The light was coming through the window in a way that made everything look softer, warmer. She was reading the newspaper, and I was drinking my coffee, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I actually looked at her. I saw the lines around her eyes, the grey in her hair, the way her hands moved as she turned the pages. And I realized that I'd spent so many years looking past her, looking through her, looking anywhere but at her, that I'd missed the person she'd become. She'd grown older right in front of me, and I hadn't been paying attention. That broke something inside me. Or maybe it opened something. Either way, I started to wake up. Waking up is painful, because once you start paying attention, you can't unsee what you've missed. You start noticing all the moments you let slip by, all the times someone reached out and you weren't there to take their hand, all the conversations you avoided because they felt too hard, too vulnerable, too real. Eleanor noticed the change in me. I remember the first time I told her I loved her, really told her, not just said it out of habit while walking out the door in the morning, but sat down across from her and said, "I love you, and I don't say it enough, and I'm sorry for all the years I wasn't here the way I should have been." She looked at me for a long time. I thought she might be angry. I thought she might ask me why it took so long. But she didn't. She just reached across the table and took my hand, and she said, "I know." And we sat there in silence, holding hands like two people who'd just met and were trying to figure out what to say next. It felt like the first honest moment we'd had in years, maybe ever. And it scared me how good it felt, because it meant I'd been living without it for so long and hadn't even realized what I was missing. My daughter came to visit not long after that. She brought her son, my grandson, who I barely knew because I'd spent years keeping everyone at arm's length. We sat in the backyard, and I watched him play, and instead of using the weight I carried as an excuse to stay distant, I let it break me open. I got down on the ground with that boy and played with him. I started reaching out to people I'd lost touch with, old friends from before the war, men I'd served with who'd made it home and tried to build lives just like I had. Some of them were doing well, some of them weren't, but all of them understood what I was talking about when I said I'd been asleep for most of my life, because they'd been asleep too. We'd all been taught the same lies, that enduring was enough, that silence was strength, that moving forward meant never looking back, and we'd all paid the price for believing it. But it wasn't too late. Not for all of us. Some of those men started waking up too, started having the conversations they'd been avoiding, started being present with the people they loved, and I like to think that maybe, just maybe, talking about it made a difference, that maybe we helped each other remember what it meant to be alive. Eleanor got sick 2 years after I started waking up. Cancer. It moved fast. The doctors gave her 6 months, and she made it 8. Those 8 months were the hardest and the best of my life, because I was finally present for them. I didn't waste a single day. I sat with her every morning and every evening. I held her hand. I told her everything I should have said decades earlier. I thanked her for staying when I gave her every reason to leave. I apologized for the years I was absent. I told her that she deserved better than what I gave her, and that I was grateful she loved me anyway. And she told me she knew, she'd always known, and she'd stayed because she believed I'd find my way back eventually. She said she was glad she got to see it before the end. That made it worth it. I held on to those words like a lifeline, because if she could forgive me, maybe I could start forgiving myself. After she passed, I thought I might fall back into the old patterns. I thought the grief might swallow me whole and I'd retreat into silence again. But it didn't happen that way, because I'd learned something in those 8 months that I couldn't unlearn. I'd learned that presence is a choice you make every single day, that being alive isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you choose again and again, even when it's hard. I'm 78 years old now. I don't know how much time I have left. Could be a year, could be 10, could be tomorrow, but I'm not worried about that anymore, because I'm not sleeping through it. I'm here, I'm awake, I'm paying attention, and I want you to do the same. I want you to stop postponing the conversations you need to have. Stop waiting for the right moment to tell someone you love them. Stop putting off the things that matter because you think you'll have time later. You might not. None of us know how much time we have, but we all have right now. And right now is enough if you choose to be present for it. If you choose to stop sleepwalking and start living. If you choose to show up, to speak up, to be vulnerable and real and human with the people around you. I know it's not easy. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it feels safer to keep your distance, to stay busy, to avoid the hard conversations and the deep feelings. But safety isn't the same as living. You can spend your whole life protecting yourself from pain and miss out on everything that makes life worth living in the process. There's a sound that's been with me for most of my life. It's the sound of names I say in my head every morning. Men who didn't come home. Men who never got the chance to grow old and make mistakes and learn and change and wake up. I used to think carrying their names meant staying frozen in the past, that I owed it to them to keep suffering, to keep punishing myself for surviving when they didn't. But I don't believe that anymore. I think the way to honor them is to live, really live, to not waste the time they didn't get, to be present for the people who are still here, to choose aliveness over survival, connection over safety, truth over comfort. That's what I'm trying to do now. And some days it's hard. Some days I still slip back into old patterns. But I catch myself faster now. I come back quicker because I know what's at stake. I know what I'm losing when I'm not paying attention. I think about my grandson a lot. He's 7 now, full of energy and questions and joy. I hope I'm around long enough to tell him the truth, to tell him that the bravest thing he'll ever do is stay awake to his own life. Eleanor used to say something that I didn't understand at the time. She'd look at me across the breakfast table and say, "You're not here." And I'd get defensive. I'd say, "I'm right here, aren't I? I'm sitting in this chair. I'm drinking this coffee. Where else would I be?" And she'd just shake her head and go quiet. I understand now what she meant. She wasn't talking about my body. She was talking about my mind, my heart, my attention. She was saying that I could be in the room and still be 1,000 miles away. And she was right. I was gone for most of our marriage, not physically, but in every other way that mattered. And I can't get that time back. I can't undo the distance. All I can do is make sure I don't make the same mistake with the time I have left. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in any of what I'm saying, I want you to know that it's not too late. It doesn't matter how long you've been asleep. You can wake up right now, today, this moment. You can decide to stop postponing and start living. The thing about sleeping through life is that you don't realize you're doing it until you wake up, and by then, you've lost time you can't get back. But you still have the time that's left, and that's what matters. Not what you've lost, not what you should have done differently, but what you're going to do now, how you're going to show up, who you're going to be. I spent 60 years of my life half asleep. I'm not wasting another day. I'm here. I'm awake. I'm paying attention to the light coming through the window, the sound of birds outside, the feeling of my old bones settling into this chair. I'm noticing the small things I used to ignore, the taste of coffee, the smell of rain, the quiet of my house that used to feel empty, but now feels peaceful. I'm alive. Finally, completely, awake and alive. This morning, I sat in my chair and thought about all the men who didn't get to grow old, all the futures that were cut short, all the ordinary moments they never got to experience. And instead of feeling guilty, I felt grateful that I'm still here, grateful that I woke up before it was too late. I don't know what happens after this. I don't know if there's anything waiting for us on the other side, or if this is all we get. But I know this. If this is all we get, then we owe it to ourselves to be here for it, to not waste it, to not sleepwalk through the only life we'll ever have. I wasted enough time. I'm not wasting any more, and I hope you won't either. I hope you'll take what I've said and let it sit with you. I hope you'll think about the people in your life and ask yourself if you're really showing up for them. I hope you'll stop postponing the things that matter. I hope you'll choose presence over distraction, connection over comfort, aliveness over safety. Because one day you'll run out of time, and when that day comes, the only thing that will matter is whether you were here for the life you had. The sun is coming through the window now. The coffee's gone cold again, but that's all right. I've said what I needed to say. I've carried this for long enough, and now I'm setting it down. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it matters too much to keep locked inside. I hope someone hears this and it makes a difference. I hope it wakes someone up before they've lost too much time. I hope it reminds someone that they're still here, still breathing, still alive. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. Don't sleep through your life. One day you'll wake up, and it might already be over. But if you're hearing this now, you still have time, so use it. Be here. Be present. Be alive. I've lived long enough to know that the ordinary days are the ones that matter most. The quiet mornings, the simple conversations, the moments when nothing special is happening and you're just there with the people you love. Those are the moments worth waking up for. Those are the moments that make a life. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss all of them. I almost did. But I woke up just in time, and now I'm asking you to do the same. Wake up before it's too late. Wake up.